Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is December 24th, 2022, and let's get over the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? First and foremost, I just want to wish my audience a very happy Christmas Eve and Christmas. Please enjoy the time with your family and friends. That is really, really important. And yeah, thank you again for your support for my channel. Now, I don't come with you with great news for my first slide. Unfortunately, the Russians did strike the city center of Kherson this morning. At least 7 people were killed and about 60 were injured. The Russians hit residential and administrative buildings in the city center. And again, this proves further that the Russians are only good at one thing and one thing only, that is resorting to terrorist attacks and killing of innocent civilian people. So this proves that the Russian state in its current form cannot exist. It needs to be reformed. And that can only happen with a clear Ukraine victory against Russia. Putin has made it very clear that his ambitions and the Russian people's ambitions are imperialistic and they go far beyond just Ukraine. So we need to stop Russia as as a world, right? As a united world front against this evil that exists. And because Russia's been hitting walls with their victory or their attempt to have some sort of victory in Ukraine, they're resorting more and more with Russian spies. They're trying to undermine European security. And this article, over the past decade covered by the Swedish report, Russia in particular appears to be very aggressive in spying on its European neighbors. So this has obviously fueled a debate amongst targeted states as to how overtly they should be tackling Moscow's espionage attempts. The concept of a more visible counterintelligence strategy has begun to gain ground. And so the recent arrests in Norway and Sweden, as well as the conviction of a Swedish consultant for spying for the Russians in 2021, and I believe he was convicted of transmitting information for Volvo or Saab to Russian spies, the GRU. And so this is a clear example of, again, the way that the Russians try to just put sticks in the wheel of Europe. And I think it's the right move, right? Before the war, all these espionage events and news, or even the killing of ex-Russian spies, as we've seen, usually would be swept under the rug very quickly by the public. However, now I think it's the right move to just be pointing the finger at Russia because we clearly know that it is them, right? Trying to undermine European security. They're trying to undermine the accession of Sweden and Finland into NATO. And that's kind of their messaging to tell these countries that we're going to make your life hell if that happens. And so I think it's very important more than ever to really expose Russia for that and really make it clear for the audience and the people and the citizens of these countries that Russia is clearly the culprit. Who else? So I'm a little bit late to the party here, but Rogozin a couple of days ago, who was the ex-head of Roscosmos that spoke belligerently against NASA in the West, he was the head of Roscosmos back in July, but he was quickly moved aside by Putin. Another person went in to fill his shoes. However, he was speaking belligerently against NASA. I think that he was the one that allowed the Russian astronauts to wave the LPR flag, the Luhansk People's Republic flag, in the International Space Station, essentially making it a political sort of gesture. And we all know that in space we should not be doing that. Um, and so he was also talking smack against NASA, the United States, making fun of, Europe and Ukraine. Well, his fate did not grow very optimistic because he was wounded in the groin because he was celebrating some sort of event in a restaurant in Donetsk, and he may lose his reproductive organ. We know which one. And I think there's other news that the shrapnel also hit his spine, so he's probably going to be losing the ability to walk or even move his limbs. So, well, karma is definitely a thing, I believe. So that is great news. This person clearly deserved this fate. And I have a lot of comments. Some people are commenting on my videos saying that, oh, you're speaking for the Ukrainian people. How dare you, about this clear Ukrainian victory. Maybe Ukrainians just want peace. Well, there's another poll that came out that says that 78% of Ukrainians, um, for the post-war future of Ukraine, believe that Ukraine should not go for any compromises with Russia in order to end the war. So that's about 80% of Ukrainians that believe that there shouldn't be any compromise, that we've crossed the line here, and that turning back would be a clear mistake. And what does it mean to head back? Well, that means, well, perhaps going a peace deal, allowing Russia to keep the territory, or perhaps, leaving them Crimea and the Donbass lines. No, 80% of Ukrainians do not agree with that. And this is a clear example that I'm just falling in line with what the Ukrainian people believe in. If the Ukrainian people tomorrow will say that they want some sort of compromise, okay, sounds good. Clearly, in my opinion, I don't think that should be the case, but at the end of the day, it's the Ukrainian people's decision here. And so we have to understand and respect that. And for my last slide, so obviously Zelensky a couple of days ago went to Washington. This is a huge PR win for Ukraine. This shows further to Russia that the United States is committed to helping Ukraine until the very end. And so the United States finally approved a $45 billion aid package for Ukraine. So this includes giving Patriot missiles and the Patriot anti-air defense systems to Ukraine, it's a massive deal. This is really going to protect the Ukrainian skies even more. Perhaps more, it's not really detailed what is going to be included for this, but it's also as an aid package for NATO. So it's not like the $45 billion heads just for Ukraine, it's also for the NATO allies. So perhaps reinforcing the Baltic countries and any other Poland and other countries part of NATO. So this is really important. And again, Zelensky's visit to the United States was really powerful. I really enjoyed listening to the speech and just seeing both Biden and Zelensky together, being happy and shaking hands. This is such an important moment in history. And the Russians are really angry about it. I've seen a video on the Russian media where they were discussing, well, Zelensky's in Washington, let's take Kiev, right? Just very funny how they were sulking at the fact that Zelensky was just, you know, blatantly, first of all, walking in Bakhmut a couple of days ago to just going to Washington. He's just going around the world getting support from the entire planet, whereas Russia can't even get, a handshake from China or India, some sort of image where they get an ally, right? So it's a huge win for Ukraine, and let's hope that we get a lot of Patriot systems, at least about an eight or a dozen, between eight to a dozen. That will be really important. That will further protect the Ukrainian skies. Again, it cannot be 100%. The Ukrainian skies will not be protected to 100%, but at least bring it to the 95%, 99% mark if possible. So that's that. In terms of the map, so it's been, to be honest, not a lot of movements. The only movements that have happened is in Bakhmut. So the great news in Bakhmut is that the Ukrainians managed to push out the Russians very, very far away, or I should say not far away, but at least outside of the city outskirts. You can see there's still a lot of back and forth between the Ukrainians and the Russian army within Bakhmut, but at least, really on the city outskirts, as you can see. However, the Russians did manage to get some sort of foothold on the suburbs of Bakhmut. You can see here that according to Deep State, they managed to take about 3 kilometers from Andriivka, right below these hills that are just above of these settlements here. So that shows that the Russians have perhaps changed their strategy and they're now attempting to do a surrounding the Ukrainian forces from behind again. So as you remember, they tried to go head first into Bakhmut. That didn't work out. It was a disaster for them. So now they're perhaps trying to push again through Andriivka. But what I'm expecting is that the Ukrainians will probably do some sort of small counteroffensive and push them out the next couple of days. And the same is going on around Soledar. So the Russians have had some success here in Yakovlivka. And so now, as you can see, they are pushing around Soledar to surround the Ukrainian forces like this, most likely. So obviously, it's not great news, but I believe that Ukrainians will be able to push them back a little bit here. And again, the last couple months have always been about, back and forth type of battles with little incursions by the Russians, and then the Ukrainians push them back. Then a little incursion by the Russians somewhere else, and then the Ukrainians push them back in Bakhmut. So Overall, nothing to be very distressed about, but it's still important enough to be discussed here. Apart from that, the front line here is pretty stagnant. There's a few offensives by the Ukrainian forces around the entire line of the P-66 highway. It's very difficult because the Russians have already had so many defenses built for the last couple of weeks. So it's not going to be easy. And with the winter settling in, it's going to be a little bit harder as well. But let's hope for a great 2023 with a lot of great positive offensives for the Ukrainian army. And that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you for your support. Again, I wish you all a very happy Christmas for tomorrow. I probably will try to make a video if there's any great news coming up. But apart from that, thank you for your support. And I will see you in the next video. Take care.